Oggi parliamo di qualcosa che confonde tutti gli studenti. Ciao ragazzi! Today we're tackling something that confuses every language learner, and that's totally understandable. Totalmente comprensibile. I'm talking about those tricky expressions that you just can't translate literally. Now, unfortunately, some of these expressions are extremely common everyday phrases, so you really need to learn them. So today, I've selected some of the most useful ones for you to know. And as always, I will explain the hows and the whys so you will be able to immediately use them with confidence. And at the end of the video, let me know in the comments which one of these phrases surprised you the most or used to confuse you the most. I always love to hear your experience, about your experience. Ok, iniziamo. Let's begin. All the phrases we will look at today share one common point that I hope will help you remember them more easily. And that is that they all use the verb avere in Italian. So we're talking about this verb. But in English, they don't use to have. So they don't translate literally to have, but they still use this verb, this avere verb in Italian. So let's start with the first one, which is extremely helpful and extremely used, even for beginners. And that is avere bisogno di. Now, avere bisogno di translate in English to need. So that's the Italian way of saying to need. Problem is that literally we don't say to need, we say to have need of. So avere to have, bisogno means need as a noun, and di means of. So we just phrase that differently, the expression of saying to need. Let me show you some examples that will explain this more easily. If you need to say, I need help, in Italian, you don't say, I need help. You say, I have need of help. That's where this phrase that confuses a lot of beginners comes from. So you have to think of it like that. Quindi, I need help. I have need of help. Ho bisogno di aiuto. That's how we say I need help in Italian. Or if you want to say they need a car, how would you say that? They have need of a car. You can say loro hanno bisogno, or you can just drop loro. Loro hanno bisogno di una macchina. Let me show you another example, a slightly more complex one. Let's suppose you want to say, I would need another towel. Per esempio, you are at your hotel in Italy and you do need another towel and you would like to use this phrase, I would need. How would you say that in Italian correctly with this phrase? Well, in this case, we will still need to conjugate the verb avere, but in this case, not only for I, but also for the conditional form, which is the polite form in Italian. So that would look like this. Avrei bisogno di, that means I would need, because we say I would have need of, and then you add whatever you need. Un altro asciugamano. Quindi avrei bisogno di un altro asciugamano. So my point here is this. With avere bisogno di, you need to remember two important things. Bisogno di stays the same all the time, never changes. Doesn't matter if it's I need, you need, they need. It doesn't matter if it's now, in the future, in the past. Bisogno di always stays the same, doesn't change. But you need to use both words, bisogno and di. What does change is the verb avere. You will need to conjugate that verb to match the subject. Io ho bisogno di, tu hai bisogno di, but also to match the tense. So, for example, if you want to say I have need of, ho bisogno di, or if you want to say I would need, I would have need of, then you would need to conjugate avere for conditional. And so that's how we end up with avrei bisogno di un altro asciugamano. So remember, with all these phrases, you can use them in any tense and subject, for any subject you want. Just remember what I told you, that bisogno di are essential, but they never change. Va bene? By the way, if you want to easily review these phrases and examples we're going over today, you can easily do so with the PDF I prepared for you for this lesson, and you will find that in the description of this video. You will find a link to download it. So use that to review all the things we are talking about today. Ok, continuiamo. Espressione numero 2. And that is avere ragione. Now, this is something that confuses a lot of students. What does that mean? Avere ragione is the Italian way of saying to be right. But as you can already tell, it doesn't literally translate to be right, because we don't use the verb to be, essere, but we use the verb avere, to have. So this is another instance where avere doesn't mean to have in English. So literally, we don't say to be right, we say to have reason. And that's the Italian way of saying to be right. So let me show you a few examples. Let's suppose you want to say, you're right, I'm sorry. That's a good phrase to know sometimes. How would you say that in Italian? That would be hai ragione. You're right. Literally, you have reason. You have reason. Hai ragione. Mi dispiace. Hai ragione. Mi dispiace. That's how Italians say, you're right, I'm sorry. Now, if you, for example, wanted to say, he's right to be asking a rise, like his job, how would you say that in Italian? Ha ragione a chiedere un aumento. He is right to be asking a rise. In Italian, he has reason at asking a rise. Va bene? Perfetto. Now, similarly to avere ragione, which means to be right, even if you want to say to be wrong in Italian, we don't say that literally like you do in English. So in English, you say to be wrong. In Italian, we say, guessed it, avere torto. Avere torto, which means literally to have wrong. So again, this is another expression where we do use avere and you don't use to have in English. So let's see this in action. Let's suppose you want to say, Luca was wrong. How would we say that? Luca aveva torto. So that means he had wrong. That's how we say that literally. What I want you to notice with this sentence, I already pointed that out before, but I want you to notice this again. You can use these phrases with any tense. Oftentimes students learn them only in the present tense, but once you know the mechanism, once you know how they work, you can use them with any tense and any subject. So in this instance, I switched to imperfetto, because that's how we would say he was wrong in the past. Luca aveva torto. So remember, you can use all these phrases in any tense. Just make sure to conjugate the verb avere correctly. The rest of the phrase stays the same, like torto does not change. Whoever was wrong or whoever was right, that part, torto or ragione, will not change. You only need to focus on the verb avere. Okay, let's see one more example for this. Per esempio, if you want to say, they are not totally wrong, that's a good phrase to know. They're not totally wrong. How would we say that? Non hanno completamente torto. Non hanno completamente torto. That means they are not totally wrong in Italian. Okay, there you have it. These avere expressions are extremely tricky for non-native Italian speakers, and yet they are commonly used in everyday conversation in Italian. So remember, don't try to translate them literally from English. Learn them as complete phrases and practice using them in context. Now, speaking of practice, it's your turn to practice. So leave me a comment below and tell me which of these phrases surprised you the most, or which one you used to used to confuse you, and then use that specific one in one sentence in the comments below. And if you want to learn more expressions like these, I do have a few more videos for you to watch, and I will leave the links to them in the description below this video. And I will see you in the next one. Ci vediamo al prossimo video. Ciao ciao!